Hello. So you might notice this is a little bit later than last time. Namely, the entire castle is taken at this point. So, you know what's a really good thing when recording something? Actually checking that it's not just recording a black screen. So that's a thing. That's a thing that happened. Yeah. So, that sucked. Anyway, moving on now. Range-wise, there really isn't much new. These guys got more potato skills, more pumpkin skills and all that. Not much else new. Gildora put up a little bit more of a fight than usual. Still didn't last very long. Zavos did his Zavos thing, basically was invincible until his healers went away. And, yeah, I mean, that's about the long and short of it. Anyway, someone's got to get kicked out, so goodbye, April. Hello. Goodbye, hireable character. I forget how exactly you're supposed to be able to hire her. I've literally... I think I maybe was able to pull it off once. But... yeah. Almost never happens. And because of reasons, we're gonna go ahead and put this on fast forward. Yes, Moldova went away. I mean, there's really no option, because I basically took over a city with zombies, so... I mean, I'm sure somebody was bound to be upset by that. At least a little bit. But yeah, sorry there haven't been as many of these, or as often lately. Been finishing up this tournament thing that I was saying I would do for a while. The Armored Core thing. Basically the series, honestly it's one of the more interesting series that never gets heard of. Seriously, but things like 15 games in now, and usually the answer from almost any time that it's brought up is, hey, I remember that one time that I saw it, you know, on that demo of the PS1 thing, was they make more of those? That was pretty fun. It's like, yeah, no, they had an entire series and nobody ever played it. Because their marketing department is just... they don't know what they're doing with that. It's like, how do you take a thing that basically made... How do I even put this? The best way to put it really is just, do you like Legos, do you like robots? Congratulations, that is exactly what that game is. It's like, here's a pile of parts, here's a bunch of thinly veiled excuses to go fight things in a giant robot. Have fun. You got this gladiator arena thing over here, you got all these crazy missions and crap, you got friggin' giant Godzilla monsters and crap. Like, why have I never heard of this? Oh, I don't know, because they never bother advertising it, ever. Alright. First time we run into the mortal enemy of zombies and do anything about them. I'm gonna think that I really have no idea how this run will ever get past POTD. I'm not sure he's gonna be able to actually do all of that. I don't know, just something to consider. That's why it's optional. But yeah, no, so... They had this entire series and all that, and... like, it had a bunch of cool builds, and cool characters, and cool mechanics, and... no one ever heard of it. And... they're just now finally making yet another one, the first one that, even got mentioned, in the last 4 years, more or less. Because they previously had one almost every year since it came out. And then they just dropped it, because they had a couple sequels that were really, really bad. Not in terms of actual, like, the gameplay or whatever was bad, I just mean in terms of the way that they went about all of it, was almost like they didn't really care. Because they had one formula that they stuck to for a very long time. Then they had a new director come in. And that director wanted to try some new stuff, and it was cool. It was cool. It wasn't the same, but it was pretty cool. Then, I guess there was a falling out between people, because that new director guy wasn't with the project anymore. And he's the guy that went on to do all the Dark Souls stuff. But, yeah, so he wasn't around for a while. They basically said, okay, no, let's give it to yet another guy. That guy listened to the feedback a little bit too harshly, and his whole take on it was, oh, people were demanding that stuff be slower, let's slow it down to the point where almost nothing's recognizable, and then just go from there. To explain what I mean by that, the original formula was basically have just a machine consisting of a leg, arms, torso, and head on the outside, and then a bunch of internal stuff, and then 4 or 5 different weapon slots and/or something built into the torso, depending on what you have. All of them were very easy to identify because that's essentially how it was made. It was made in a way where it's like, oh, you know, you look at the other guy and it's like, yes, just from looking at that guy, I know exactly what they're about. Like Dark Souls was. It's a very similar idea. You had a regenerating energy thing that's, you kind of had this whole like build choice of, you know, what builds up heat, what doesn't, you know, do you want to sacrifice the energy that you use for moving to have different weapons on there? Is it even a practical thing for what you're running with? And there was just a lot of different options to go with. You know, the story wasn't anything to write home about, but it worked. It was serviceable. Everyone was in it. Like, there was even a running joke in the games of just, we know that this is like almost comic book-esque writing. It's you don't have to worry too hard about it. It's always like there's a big bad thing. It's almost always some runaway robot AI. You know, nothing too crazy. No, so... No, wait. Put April back in and pretend that she won't throw a hissy fit. But okay, so... Like, for example, my personal favorite one. You're just basically doing jobs for a while. Your main character, each and every single time, is just literally just doing their job. Their job's to be a kind of mercenary contractor kind of thing. Yeah, pretty much, lady. Alright, then Hector shows up. So at this point, apparently after this, I need to remember to go and check the war report. And then apparently she's supposed to show up at Ogre or something? Not sure. We'll find out when we get there. But anyways, like I was saying, so yeah, in each of these, you know, you're literally just somebody doing their job, which is, you know, the best way that they possibly could have gone about that. And, like, there's very obvious joke builds in there. Like, there's one guy in one of the early PS1 games that were out there. His mech, or his AC in this case, was literally just powered by a frickin' hamster wheel. Like, oh, he just made a giant mech out of wood one day, and it's a human-powered engine somehow. Up to you to figure out how that works exactly. It does somehow, and he's actually surprisingly terrifying, but yeah, you know, it flies. It's got fire coming out of it. The tank. I mean, I don't know how that works exactly. It's just a flying Flintstones tank or whatever. But, no, it had a good bit of humor to it. It had its whole design philosophy was just, you know, you build a thing, and then you try to do as much as you can with it. And it created this whole, you know, sort of mini community of people doing challenge runs, which I've been doing for ages, and it's fun, is what I'm trying to get at. You know, like stuff like you start off with pretty much the local equivalent of a Ford Taurus. So, basically, everyone's tried to do a starter run at some point, which is just a machine you start with. It sucks in pretty much every category. But you can still pull off tricks with it. You know, you can still use the game's mechanics to pull off some cool stuff. So, Eh, I guess what had happened, people felt, or the higher-ups there kind of felt that their formula was getting stale. Yes, yes, you are Hector, you are Mr. Bossman. So they felt that it was getting stale, I guess. And so they did this whole thing where, you know, they called somebody out to make it faster, and it basically turned into a sort of Gundam kind of thing. But the same ideas still generally applied. So you could still look at somebody and it's like, okay, you know, okay, I should probably mention at this point they included a shield mechanic, in which you could have like an offensive or defensive shield for that particular generation. But you know, so like, okay, you know, I see the guys with friggin' shotgun and physical blade, they're probably going for going and breaking down a shield and, you know, pile driving somebody. Like, okay, you know what they're gonna do based on how they loaded themselves out, and it still worked. But then 5th gen happened. What they did there, they took the previously bright and colorful setting, changed it around entirely to be all bleak and post-apocalyptic, like, it's just dust and fire and everything all the time. I think there's, between the two of them, 1 or 2 maps, and they have a sandstorm instead. And there's almost never clear weather. There's constantly grit flying around, and it's just hard to see. But they were going for kind of a cover shooter kind of thing. And it sort of worked. You know, they added a bunch of new mechanics because they're always, you know, experimenting with different stuff. They're like, okay, you know, this is cool. So they do all that. But then, I don't even know what that is. Probably no. I want to say it's the one that gets rid of fear. Okay. But yeah, so they changed all of the machines to look nearly identical unless they were a completely different type. Like before, for example, you looked at somebody and like if you saw they had flat plating on their machine or whatever, like okay, you know, that's got shell defense. You see rounded, like shaped plating and all that, and it's like okay, that's energy defense. But then they didn't have that anymore. They switched it to like a 3 damage system, because before it was a shell energy and then everything you got hit by also generated heat. And then if you overheated, you basically started bleeding armor and that kind of thing. It was a fun system. But you know, so they tried switching it to just every single weapon can stagger you and break your defense pretty much. If you're hit enough times by the thing. So if you get hit with enough velocity, you just basically get knocked off balance and you can't defend as well. But then at the same time they split it into a 3 damage system, and then usually everybody was resistant to 2 of them, or like immune to 1 and sucked against 2 of them, or they were a tank and they were just good against everything. And I don't know, generally speaking, people seem to not like it as much because there was a lot more ambushing more than anything else. Just everything was a little bit too limited. And it's weird because probably the one that was the most appreciated from the series was the 3rd one. Not technically the 3rd one, but the one that's numerically just 3, even though it was like the 7th or 8th one or something. Let's see, 3rd gen had 3. No, it was the 6th one, but it was actually 3. Don't think about it too hard. Okay, so what had happened there? They had... do I pumpkin bomb you? I think I pumpkin bomb. Anyone to back it up? Are those 2 archers that are able to back it up? Ben and Tia, yeah, so they might be able to help take this guy out. Not the safe approach, but they'll be fine. Okay. So what 3 did, it had the most obvious designs as far as the parts went. Like, they were very, very, very strict about sticking to their design philosophy. Like, as far as, you know, if something's flat, it's shell, that kind of thing. If a weapon's all rounded and stuff like that, it's going to be an energy thing. If it's, you know, all military looking, it's going to be a shell thing, probably. But just point being, everything was very identifiable. And, well, the setting was basically the same as the very first one that came out. It's, you're doing your job, then one day it turns out stuff is just malfunctioning all over the place, and everybody runs into a problem with what are more or less Terminators. They're no giant, evil, intentional big bad or anything, they're just like, okay, everything's malfunctioning. It's a problem, can somebody go deal with this? And then naturally there's a few a-holes sticking around like, no, we made a church to the computer god, so you can't do that. And they just kind of function as the foil in that case. Let's see, what am I forgetting here? Well, point being, yeah, that one's mechanics were the simplest. I guess they weren't the simplest. I guess they were the easiest to understand. The designs were very obvious. It had a good feel to it. Yeah, everything was colorful. They always had a good sense of humor about it, and that's kind of what was lacking in the very end generation of it. I should point out, by the way, none of these are technically confirmed canonical in any way. They kind of just go to different timelines at random. I mean, they had like 4 games in a row, and then it's kind of questionable exactly when they all come together. So they couldn't really decide on a storyline. But, yeah, no, I've done a ton of parts on AC3 and Formula Front and all that. And to get to the original point I was trying to get at, I've been doing this kind of tournament thing of just rebuilding everything from the entire series, or at least the most notable ones. Since technically I can only go up to 190 of them, so I remade those and gave them AIs, and yeah, just basically just a giant tournament between all of them. So that's been going on. Pretty darn fun and stuff. Things like it's if you've ever heard the joke song Ultimate Showdown of Ultimate Destiny, kind of like that with robots, where it's just like all the weird joke builds and all the weird story ones and all the everything just like suddenly come together for one giant friggin' fight. Fun. Always love that kind of stuff. At this point I think I'm gonna have everyone pretty much hold wherever they're holding and try to get as much damage off on the group as possible. Where did I put my coffee? There you are. Like one of my favorite ones unfortunately got eliminated from, well, he took his first loss. It's kind of like a whole 2-round elimination thing. Everyone's allowed to take one loss. If they take their second loss, they're eliminated. But he lost one recently, but it's this guy called Crossback, or Doral technically. But he shows up about halfway through AC3, and in the background you're hearing a little bit about, well, there's this just group going around doing some sort of, we don't even know what, they're trying to fight our computer thing that runs everything. I should mention the world's ended a couple times by this point. So they're just living in like a giant bunker underground. Like, have this computer that runs everything, some people don't like it, they're trying to do stuff against it. So they're not actively threatening anyone, but they just don't like the thing. And so you run into them for the first time, and like they have all this little army or whatever, they pretty much just breeze straight through because they're nothing. And then this guy comes down with like cool boss music, comes down in an elevator, and pops out of the thing. There's like this cool techno going and everything. Oh man, this guy's gonna be a real fight and everything. It's cool stuff's about to happen. And he, unless you did something really, really wrong by that point, you can stand there and he might actually end up beating himself. To explain kind of the situation there. So you've got different kind of categories of different weapons that are available to different parts of your frame there. So like in your core, in that one, you basically have 3 options. of 3 different kinds of laser things. Essentially, it's like this little orb, like, pops out, fires whatever amount of shots it has, and then you basically pop it back in and it recharges and you can use it again later. And it's mostly there because they had a system for the longest time where you had a blade in your left arm. That was your only thing on your left arm. And then they wanted to start adding weapons to that left arm, so they basically put in a thing in your core that was pretty much, okay, you need an infinite weapon of some kind, because you may run into all kinds of weird complications. So here you go, you have this rechargeable laser thing you can stick in there. So your options are either to have a standard one, which lets you move really fast, has an automatic, thing that shoots missiles out of the air and stuff, or you can go for this, more direct fighting version. So, you got your options and everything. But so he has one of those, which is like this little dinky machine gun thing, which is pretty useful, but not terribly threatening on its own. Bye, Hector. Shame about your whole dying in Greek mythology 2 thing. But yeah, so he has that, he has mines, which there are a bunch of different kinds of mines, but the ones that he has in particular are like, it just like vomits out a pile of things that stick onto whatever you fire him at. Except he has a really annoying habit of running into them himself. What happened? Yes, hello, Heim. Okay. Before I forget, let me read through all this. Okay. That. Really don't think I can actually... Okay, so we went to Brigannis. I think this is the one where she actually just dies no matter what you do. Out of curiosity. Don't any of these towns do anything? Yeah, no. It's not the right route. You know what? It's actually gone a little bit late here. No, let's do one more. No. Because it's going to be a long one, because it's a castle. I'll do that castle by itself. So, to finish the story, the guy has a tendency to just basically have nothing useful on him and run into his own mines. There we go. That's the end of the story. Yeah. Point being, I was kind of hoping he would get somewhere in that tournament. He hasn't yet. I'll write more about it in the next part. Anyway, bye.